You can't learn to ride a bicycle by reading a book on how to drive a bicycle. It's always the youngsters who fall for it. They feel that doing complex computation somehow will lead to a lot of wealth generation. That's the same story. The ball stops, the music stops. You need to get home before that. Otherwise, you lose.
Do you really think Viksit Bharat 2047 is in the paper, or do you really see the developments?
Does the world really want to purchase from us? That the new generations are better?
Professor Saumil Shah, welcome to TWC Presents Decoding. But
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite. It's been my pleasure.
thank you, sir. But before asking you आप कैसे हैं, let's first ask आज का market कैसा रहा है?
Markets are always awesome. If they rise, you have an opportunity to sell. If they fall, you have an opportunity to buy. So for us, markets are always awesome.
और मैं पूछ सकता हूँ कि आपका दिन कैसा गया हुआ है?
My day was busy classes, and then it started early 4 o'clock. I was traveling, so I was in Lonavala for a day yesterday. So last 2 days I've been busy with traveling, catching up with family, because was working till late on Saturday night and had a class today. So, well, it's been long and tiring for sure.
So it's been long and tiring, but the things which we are going to discuss today, it will be going to be more long and more tiring.
No, markets, discussing markets and talking about markets, and that too with you, is always fun. So it cannot be tiring.
Right, sir.
The day can be tiring and boring, but talking with students can never be tiring and boring.
So the topics like wealth generation, wealth creation, equity markets,
Correct.
real estate,
Okay.
they are very interesting to talk about.
Correct.
So my first question goes like, sir, why is it first necessary to talk about these topics in university or in any of the institution?
See, it's important to understand that almost all of us will do some work or the other. हर कोई कुछ ना कुछ तो कर लेगा. People will also earn money. And what then matters is how much are you able to invest that money properly or not. Because your earning, part of it is supposed to be your retirement pool. And if you are not able to invest that properly, you will not have money when you stop earning. And that is when difficult phases of life are there. So it is very important that people learn how to save and invest so that they are able to lead a very happy life even in their past. In their future. So some of the money that you earn today is supposed to be compensation which has to be saved for the future, and it's not supposed to be all enjoyed today. If you enjoy it all today, well, you may have a difficult time going further.
Sir, आप finance के faculty है, so do you understand the importance of financial management?
Correct.
We, as a student of the university, because we are studying the courses like financial management, financial markets, and financial services, we do know a little bit about how to manage personal finances.
Correct.
But the students who are in school right now,
Right.
their curriculum goes far beyond managing how to manage personal finances, how to save from their early age.
Correct.
So my concern is, why don't school curriculums add this subject in their school subject so that they can save for their future expenses right from an early age?
Okay. So the issue over there is that schools do have financial planning and wealth management and topics like that now from the CBSE school. The 12 standard topics are there. So there are some skill-based topics. But the problem over there are twofold. One, this is a attitude that you need to change. It is a skill that you need to gain. And there's a difference between a knowledge and a skill. Knowledge can be learned by reading books, but skill requires application. It requires aptitude. To give you a simple illustration, as I quote many a times in class, you can't learn to ride a bicycle by reading a book on how to drive a bicycle. You have to ride it. You have to fall. You have to learn how to balance the steering. So investing is something like that. Saving is something like that. And when you are introducing it too early, people may not have the aptitude for it because they don't understand the importance of money. They may not have the liking for it because they are not able to visualize the issues that they are. So there is this question of that, yes, if you catch them young, it will benefit. But when you catch them young, are they really interested? Are they able to understand? So those are kind of issues which are very complex. So you start with inculcating the importance of saving and investment, but the more complex things need to be dealt with when people start understanding the importance.
Right.
Because savings people can understand very intuitively. That is why even before we go into school, our tradition and most traditions across the world have piggy banks. What are piggy banks? They are an important investment lesson for everyone that you have to learn to save so that you get a larger sum of money which you may be able to use at a later date. While saving has been taught, investing is not taught because investing is more complex. Now, we need to ensure that we align things so that that basic principle of saving is also linked with investing so that people understand that due to things like inflation, where money is losing value, constantly you can't just save, but it has to be saved in a manner in which it grows adjusted for time value of money or loss of purchasing power due to inflation.
Right. So this is the problem. When we are in school, we know what saving means.
You're right.
But when we enter college or university, we learn to understand how to convert that savings into healthy investments.
Correct.
And that is what you professors help us with. So thank you so much for that.
You're most welcome. Do you think I really make an impact? Because I see a lot of people blowing a lot of wealth and enjoying life rather than learning and applying lessons of investments.
So that's the Gen Z generation,
Okay.
which we'll be covering in the later part of our podcast.
Great.
That will be very much interesting. So
Okay.
let's wait for some fun afterwards.
Okay.
Right. But I do really think that understanding finance has the power to create a healthy future for yourself, as well as it has the power to destroy your future. Do you agree with that thing?
Well, I would not go to so drastic as to say destroy yourself or help yourself. But yes, if you don't save and invest, you will have to work when you are not capable of working or you would rather want to enjoy life. If you have a nice retirement saving pool, probably you can take it easy. But then there also has to be an appreciation that life is full of uncertainties. You may have saved for a lot of money, but there may be uncertain wildcard events and your savings may have to be used up and you still may end up. So to just say that, yeah, because he has saved, because he is invested, he is going to have a healthy life, he is going to have a fun life, is not always going to be the case.
Right.
Remember, you may have wealth, but we have Diwali coming. A lot of people worship Dhan Pujan and do Dhan Puja on Lakshmi and they worship goddess Lakshmi. But we also need to know that there's another aspect of Dhan and that is Dhanvantri Devi, the goddess of health.
Right.
A lot of people forget that while pursuing the business of wealth, they lose focus on the business of health. And because of that, many a times it so ends up that they've collected a lot of wealth, but because they don't have health, they are not able to see and enjoy that wealth.
Right.
And therefore, there has to be a balance in life in everything that you do. Remember, at the end of the day, money is important in life, but it's not the most important thing. Families, friends, having a healthy life are more important than just being rich and wealthy.
Right.
That is what I feel.
Right. So just wanted to understand, आप जब हमारी उम्र के थे तब how did you invested and started with the markets?
Well, I was lucky enough to be having grandparents, parents, and family around me who used to invest. So I got intrigued by looking at them. I was also lucky enough that a couple of my friends were interested in investing. So in college, we started investing. We used to participate in investment competitions. And that is how we slowly started investing. And when we started earning the little money that we had, we would try and invest because the IPO culture was in boom when we graduated, which made us invest. And that is how we slowly picked up the journey. Not that we had a lot of wealth. So I don't say that I've done a lot of things, nor do I have a lot of wealth today. My biggest wealth is the students and the respect and the love that I get from the students, apart from my monetary wealth.
So, don't you think the IPOs which are coming right now, they are listing at the premium of more than 50% or more than 100% of their real value?
Correct.
So they have incorporated the mindset in the young individuals that investing is really very easy, and it is very easy to create wealth from the stock markets.
Correct.
Why are they right or why are they wrong in thinking that way?
Well, markets, there's nothing right, nothing wrong. Because there are people who are greedy and they want to make a quick buck. Market is trying to take advantage of the mood. Why are you able to get such high valuations where there was a lot of liquidity which was floating around? Remember, during COVID, a lot of governments around the world cut interest rates to near zero. A lot of fiscal stimulus was there, and therefore a lot of liquidity started floating around. And all of that liquidity had to find a home somewhere. Now, it's very difficult, as we have discussed in class, to put up a plant or do something productive in the short run. So where does all that money go in the short run? Well, it went to its natural flow, which was the easiest. Like water would always flow to the direction where it finds it easiest to flow. Money also follows that way. So it went into the markets because it's always easy to invest in the markets. Right. And when a lot of people started investing, well, the valuations went out of whack. This, by the way, is not something new. This has happened in the past. If you read financial history, there have been market bubbles and then those bubbles have burst. Every time there's a new story. But the basic underlying thing is always the same, that you moved away from fair value. People got caught up in a mania and people thought that this will continue forever. But remember, in the financial markets, corrections are normal, they are healthy, they happen with regular frequency. It's just that when you are part of that and you are so caught up with it that you don't realize, if you are not conscious enough, if you have not read history enough, that these things can change. One of the reasons why youngsters have fallen for it this time is not something new. It's always the youngsters who fall for it because they are not aware of the financial history. So if youngsters, and at a young age, you start reading about financial history and start understanding it, which of course is a very boring thing to do for youngsters.
Right.
As you know, in finance class, people don't want to read, especially people who are involved in the field of finance. They want to do computations. They feel that doing complex computations somehow will lead to a lot of wealth generation. They are interested in maths. Nothing wrong with that because they are numerically minded. But it is very important also to learn about the financial history. If you would have read about financial history, you would have realized that this kind of bubbles have happened in history with a very regular frequency. Right. Though the frequency may not be regular in terms of the number of years which it has happened, but this kind of events happen. And capitalism is beautiful in that sense that it creates a lot of opportunity. It creates opportunity for innovation because there was surplus capital. New businesses started. You had food delivery. You had so many new businesses which started. With COVID, when all of this liquidity came, many of them could not survive because they were not profitable. So only the strongest and the fittest survive. The rest has wound up. So, well, someone got opportunity. Someone made a lot of money. Now, if you don't know when to get out at the right time, I'm sure all of you would have heard the story of Cinderella. Right. That's the same story. The ball stops, the music stops. You need to get home before that. Otherwise, you lose.
But, okay, as you mentioned, the importance of reading finance, reading history a lot to understand mainstream of finance. What the problem with our generation is, they run after returns and they get into short-term trading rather than long-term investments. So what advice will you give to those individuals who want to create wealth, but they don't want to read history or analyze companies for long term. They just want to invest on the basis of tips, on the basis of information. And
Well, I can't teach them anything. As you know, I have told often in class, I can only talk, I can only try and teach. Learning is something that you will have to do. So, learning is something that the youngsters themselves have to do. And the market is the greatest teacher. If you don't learn, well, you will fall. It's like by riding bicycle, if I come to that analogy once again. If you don't know how to ride, sooner or later you will fall down. And that is when you learn that balancing the steering is important. Going in the right direction is important. Otherwise, you scrape your knees, you break your hands. Market is just like that. Market teaches anyone who does not care to listen. So there are a lot of people, I believe, that what you say is completely correct, who, because of the beginner's luck, because of this liquidity, thought that they did something and that is repeatable. And they try to repeat the same pattern. Unfortunately, the environment changes. And while I said reading about history, it's not just history, it is also about the current environment. The wars which are taking place, the conflicts which are taking place, the various geopolitical actions which are taking place, all of them have an impact on the market. So not only do you need to learn about history, you also need to be aware of current affairs and how it would impact corporations and how it would impact profits. If you fail to do that, well, I am not going to teach anyone. Market is going to teach everyone, is what I firmly believe in. I can only throw light and I can only show a path. Walking and talking the walk has to be done by all of you.
that's quite insightful. But right now, as you told about current affairs, the people which entered the markets during 2020 era, they didn't saw fall in the equity markets.
Correct.
Right. And what we are observing and seeing from the past 1 month, the markets and the stock prices, everything has corrected itself by 5% to 10%. And they are thinking of a big fall in 2025. So what are your views? Should one hold up with the stocks, or how should they look for regarding their holdings in the markets?
Well, I can't offer a general investment advice to everyone because everyone's position would be different, everyone's entry point would be different.
Right.
But I do have a couple of questions on what you asked me. Would 5% or 10% be a very significant fall?
I think that is best time for value averaging.
Right? So now you have to see whether the fundamental thesis on the basis of which you invested. If you had one fundamental thesis, and if you are not just invested on the basis of someone's tip, you have to revisit that investment thesis. You have to question yourself, does this story still hold or does it not hold? Remember, we focus on balance sheets, we focus on profit and loss accounts, etc. But they all tell you about the past, whereas valuation is a exercise about future. And therefore, there's always going to be some uncertainty about it. So you have to ask yourself that I invested it on for this reasons. Does this investment thesis hold? Then I should stay investment. If this investment thesis does not hold, well, I should look at pairing, taking some money off, taking some profits off the table, diversifying my portfolio, or once in a while you take losses and move on. Because if you have a dead stock and it is not going to give you return for a long period of time, you better take that money, invest it somewhere which is going to perform better. But the crux for all of this is you have to have knowledge, you have to read, you have to be aware of various disciplines like economics, geopolitics, etc. If you're just going to go by tips, well, God help you. I have no solution for such people.
So, yeah, this question I've been researching a bit for a long time right now.
Yeah.
Everyone says markets and the economy correlates in the longer span of time.
Correct.
Is this a fact or is this a myth? How does one should make decision based on how the economy is looking at the long term, or does the market has its own fundamentals or technicals?
Well, there are some aspects of it which are on the long-term outlook of the economy. For illustration, there was a period when China was booming. There was a period in the 2000s when we, India, as a country, were booming.
Right.
America was booming. England was booming
Like-
at a given point of time. The Romans were booming at a given point of time.
Right.
So there are definitely periods of time when situations happen so that certain parts of the world boom
Right.
because of various reasons. Say, after World War II, there was a lot of reconstruction to be done in Germany. So while the World War II was extremely bad for the people who lived in Europe, because they suffered a lot of life loss, they suffered a lot of loss of life, limb, property. There was the opportunity for recreation. In what we read is that in the destruction are the seeds of creation. So when something is destroyed, well, there is also an opportunity of new creation, new opportunities. And therefore, if there has been a lot of destruction somewhere, I'm sure there will be an end to it. There has been no day that I know of when the sun after going down has not come up. And that is what I feel for finance. What is different is the sun always rises in the east and sets in the west. In the financial field, a sector which went down, or a country or a region which went down, may not be necessarily the same which may rise. And that is why diversification matters. That is why regional allocation matters. That is why diversifying across asset class matters. So you may have to look at doing all of that. Diversifying across stocks, diversifying across asset class, like having an exposure to gold, silver, real estate, depending on your personal circumstances. So that would be my take on
The reason
prices.
why I asked this question was Japan's stock market Nikkei. It was in a constant state of sideways movement from 1990 to 2000, 2015. So people who had invested money in Japanese stock market, they didn't earn anything. And we are seeing a great picture of Indian economy for the next 20-25 years, as government is promising of Viksit Bharat 2047.
Correct.
Do you really think Viksit Bharat 2047 is in the paper, or do you really see the developments happening in the country?
Well, as far as so there are a couple of things that you brought into the question. One was Japan and its stagnation, and you trying to compare that to India and the growth that we'll have. Remember, Japan stagnated, but before that stagnation, it had boomed, and it had boomed to crazy levels. The land under the Palace of Tokyo, it has been very famously said, was worth more than the state of California. So there was that kind of a overvaluation, or there was that kind of a return which happened. After that, it stagnated. Now, why did it stagnate? It all of us from a very productive economy. Japan had an aging population. Consumption started slowing down. Exports to different places were difficult. Different parts of the world started producing what Japan was producing with equal kinds of efficiency, productivity, etc. For illustration, today, Indian car manufacturers are selling their cars. The very Japanese producers are producing cars in Japan, in India, and selling them in Japan. So cost competitiveness has come. So when things start becoming expensive, competitive advantage goes away, some other region will boom. And that is where the previous point that I said about diversification comes in. That nothing goes to infinity. Everything corrects beyond a certain point. Now, when you compare that to India, the question for us to ask is whether we have boomed and whether there is further room for growth. Demographically speaking, we definitely have room for growth. Whether we will grow or not depends on your generation. Because you, those below the age of 35, are now forming the majority of the population. The questions to be asked over there is the large number of the population or the larger amount of the population productive, knowledgeable, having sufficient skills? Will we be able to produce for the world? Will we be able to export to the world? If not products, services? How will we contribute to the world? Why would the world want us? And there comes the importance of the knowledge economy. Remember, in the world of the future, you are not going to get wealth by fighting battles or bombing other people. It is going to be a world of knowledge. And so, unless and until our population becomes more knowledgeable and skilled, we may not grow. But if we do, well, sky's the limit. So, would it be just a simple thing that we will put infrastructure and therefore people will come? Well, famously, Japan has its bridges of to nowhere, where Japan over invested in infrastructure. But population started degrowth. There was no need for overbuilding. But some of those things are lessons in history which you can only learn after the event has happened. Right? So we may put in a lot of infrastructure. Does that necessarily mean that we'll boom? Well, if we have a large population who finds it affordable, we'll definitely boom. But right now, looking at the economy, data, it seems that India is having two very distinct economies. There's the top class, for whom we have the lifestyle which is equivalent to, or their lifestyle is even better than the people in the most advanced nations, and their average incomes are even more. So you have a very high per capita income top class. You also have a large lower class whose per capita incomes are less than many of the developing countries. So where will that balance come depends on where will India grow. Because remember, the people at the top, beyond a certain point, they will not consume just Indian goods and Indian services. They want their Rolls Royces, they want their BMWs, they want their Porsches. All of that will bring in trade. But the manufacturing part of the value addition will get captured in some other jurisdiction. And therefore, if only a small segment of the population earns a lot, well, that may not pull the country. And that is why it is important that we educate large masses of our people so that all of them are able to earn and consume. And then we will be able to be there.
Okay, let's discuss about two things.
Sure.
First is infrastructure, and second, as you mentioned, manufacturing versus service. Let's first talk about infrastructure. Do you agree? Infrastructure is the engine of economic growth.
Let's not say to whether I agree or not, because I don't claim to have all the relevant knowledge myself. I study small amounts of data. I have limited knowledge. So I would not say that I have a definite answer this way or that way. But one thing is very clear, that whenever you build a infrastructure, what is going to be the ROI on that infrastructure that you have created is what is very important. Let me give you one illustration. We've created Vande Bharat trains, but if you look at the data, not all of them are running full capacity all the time. There are some routes where they are very successful, but on many routes they are not successful in terms of full occupancy. But there are a lot of people who are not getting tickets. I was reading the newspaper today morning that the waiting list from Surat Udna to Uttar Pradesh is 4,000, and that too after clearing a backlog of 19,000. So if you created the infrastructure which only the elite could use, but the elite are having an option of flying also, so that infrastructure investment you did may go underutilized, whereas there is a demand which is going unfulfilled. So just creating infrastructure, I don't think is a panacea. You have to create the right kind of infrastructure, because I can travel in a first class air conditioned coupe. You can travel in a first class air conditioned coupe if we have the wealth. But we have to ask this question: how many people have that wealth? How many people want to travel that way? Is that a large portion of our country? Are we creating roads, infrastructure, etc. only to cater to that, or are we also creating things which can be catering? So for illustration, we do need to invest in railway. If we invest in railway where we can move large parts of our population swiftly, we'll have a lot of advantage. Similarly, we need to invest in roadways. But are those roadways affordable for people to be utilized is also a question that we have to ask. Because if you build bridges to nowhere or roads to nowhere, well, you may have invested, it may create the temporary boom because it was consuming capital expenditure services when it was being constructed. But if utilization is not there after it has been created, your ROIs will become very poor.
But the main concern why lot of policies are not successful and they doesn't get implemented is the demographic profile of the population of India. As you mentioned, very less population, maybe around 1 or 2% will be high net worth individuals, and there are huge masses of population in the below poverty line or classified as above little above below poverty line. So the policies to be implemented and the infrastructure and the manufacturing units to be set up in the country like India, how can government probably try to ensure that each and every class of individual gets the benefits after implementing that particular policy?
Okay. See, I'm a very small person. I do not know all of the data. So I would not say that I know all the answers. Now, when you say that how government can do, one thing is very clear, government cannot do all the things for all the people all the time. All right? So it can only create enabling environment. And as I said, you create social infrastructure which caters to different kind of people at different point of time. What is below poverty line, etc. data, those data are subject to debate, so let's not even go over there. But yes, we can understand that there are some kinds of social infrastructure which can be utilized by a lot of people. You create that kind of social infrastructure. One classic illustration is the BRTS system that we have in Ahmedabad. You are able to move masses of people in a reasonably more comfortable air-conditioned environment across the city. That would increase the mobility of the people at the bottom end. They are able to travel farther for work. They are able to arrive fresher, and because of that, their productivity would increase. So, in that sense, you would be able to have a larger social economic impact rather than you just creating a infrastructure which is going to be used only by the elite. That is what I'm trying to say. But yes, it has to be a collective effort, private individuals, society. We do have our government trying to do some of the right things. Remember, at the end of the day, the government also has very limited means. When you talk about India, it's a complex country. You have the center, you have the states. Who controls what? How effective the intention is there, but how effective is the implementation is also a concern over here.
Okay. Right. So, Professor Saumil Shah, before we go on to a second segment,
Sure.
where we'll be talking about changes and their finances, we have heard of Dr. Raghuram Rajan. He emphasizes a lot more on service sector and a little less on manufacturing sector. So till now, till 2024 or 2020, India was a country which depends on agriculture and service sector. But as we saw the shift of government in the budget towards manufacturing units and bringing lot of MNC companies to build their manufacturing capacities in India, is the move justified?
Well, let's not get into that. Let history alone tell us whether the move was justified or not. But one thing is very clear, that you want to grow by exporting to the world. In a world where people are becoming more inward looking and they want to make their own countries great, we also have to look at, even if we create world class capabilities, what would happen when the world stops purchasing from us? Or does the world really want to purchase from us? So yes, if you are doing things where the world wants to purchase from us, you definitely need to create world class capacities. But if we find that there are restrictions, then what's the point in creating those world class capacities if you are not able to handle geopolitics? So it's a difficult problem to solve. There's no definitive answer. Different people say different things. I am looking at only small returns from the markets. Those are very complex problems. Economist, I
So
am
are
not.
us.
So let's leave the world of economics to the economist.
Great. So probably we can start the second segment of our podcasting,
Sure.
where we'll be inviting someone from Wealth Club to discuss about future of investments and influencers and fintech platforms.
So, welcome, sir, to the second segment of our podcast.
Thank you.
So, in this segment, we are going to talk about Generation Z, how they think about finances and how they think about investments as a whole.
Okay.
So, my first question would be like, what do you think about Gen Zs? Will they be able to build wealth, considering the vast amount of information that they have and access to information in this current era is very much evident as we know. So what do you think about this?
I'm always of the opinion that the new generations are better informed because information is becoming more easily available. The processing power is also getting more cheaper and cheaper. And therefore, I am of the view that the future is always going to be brighter on an aggregate level. Yes, there may be pockets where you may have conflicts, you may have wars, etc. And so the future seems to be very bleak for those people, at least when they are going through those conflicts. But on an average, the future is always brighter, it is always better. If you compare humankind with what we were in the 17th century or the 16th or the 15th century, I'm sure on an aggregate level, all of us are doing less labor, are living a more comfortable life. If we filter out those areas where those problems or conflicts, etc., are there, on an average, in advanced nations, as well as in countries like India, the absolute level of poverty has fallen down, and we see lesser and lesser people who are absolutely poor. Now, whether people will be able to build wealth on an aggregate level is a very interesting and difficult question to which I don't think I have a definitive answer. What will happen is that the world of tomorrow is the world of knowledge. Those who will have knowledge will be able to create wealth. But then there will be something new which will come, and therefore a new opportunity will be available to someone else. So, how is it that one is able to manage the wealth that one has created, or the income that one has created is going to play a significant role. So, as a whole, mankind will definitely be better off. Gen Z will definitely be better off. But as individuals, well, it's up to the individuals how they deal with their lives, whether they will become wealthy or not. Otherwise, wealth will keep on shifting. And as in Indian tradition, they say, Lakshmi ji always keeps on moving from one place to another. So,
But to add a little bit of more perspective to this, let me add three factors how we have seen individuals building their own wealth.
correct.
First is to build great amount of wealth, you need a lot of patience.
Correct.
Second one is to build wealth, you along with patience, your spending habits or living habits that should be in control.
Okay.
And third one is we are living in an era of access information.
Correct.
So that may be beneficial, but that may be not beneficial, as we right now have a lot of influencers which we compare as investment advisors, and they are giving unsolicited tips in the open platforms, and people are blindly believing them. And this is where I think the perspective of wealth generation and wealth creation comes into play, because if we don't undertake the measures of how systematically wealth can be built over time, they'll don't get the benefit of time value of money, which we understand in finances.
Okay.
So how can Gen Alpha, people who were born after 2015 and who are technology savvy people, how should they look building their own health?
Uh, on an aggregate level, things are more of the same. When the printing press was printed, people would have printed anything. People would have bought. Then people would have become smarter. When was the radio was invented, the same would have happened. When TV was invented, the same would have happened. When we have internet, people have freedom to speak. People have freedom to transmit their thoughts. Now it is up to all of us whether we want to believe that or not, and that is where the role of education comes in, where we understand the difference between the good and the bad. So I would only say that, well, get educated, learn in the real sense of the word, so that you are able to differentiate between such charlatans, people who have not got sufficient depth of the subject matter but are trying to be influencers, as you call them. My question is, should you invest on the basis of someone who is an influencer, and the word itself says that he is trying to influence you? So it is in your self-interest to do things which are of your self-interest and not what someone is trying to influence you for. And therefore, you have to apply your mind. You have to decide whether what is being said is good or not. And for that, the simple requirement is knowledge. Acquire knowledge, and I'm sure most people will be able to understand over a period of time. They may make some losses, they may make some mistakes, but if those losses and mistakes are small, you will be able to survive. People who are even more smarter, they will look at others making mistakes and avoid that mistake. And they will also make wealth. So it is important that you either learn yourself or you learn from the mistake of others. Choice is yours.
Was that different during your era?
I think it was the same in every era. The scale and the reach was different. Here, because of internet, million people can book a Coldplay concert. And you can say there was this humongous number of people who are outstanding and waiting in a line to get tickets. Well, in our era, Coldplay didn't have that reach. None of us were aware of Coldplay. None of us could go and get those tickets. So there was no question of million people wanting to book tickets because it was not possible. So I would humbly submit that each era is different and it would be a futile exercise to compare one era with another era. The only thing that I would say is, in all eras, knowledge has been important. And application of knowledge has been more important than knowledge per se. Along with application of knowledge, skills are required. Skills require practice. So you may have knowledge, you also need to have the skill of applying that knowledge, and that comes by practice. And practice also brings you experience. So if people get knowledge, if people acquire skills, if people acquire experience, I am sure everyone would be fine. But yes, there may be a probability, there may be a luck factor, there may be a chance factor, which also plays, and we should not underestimate that. Some people may, in spite of having knowledge, in spite of having skills, may be caught up in a bad situation. What if you get caught up in the conflict zone? You are intelligent, you are smart, you are savvy, but you are at the wrong place at the wrong time. Those unlucky people, or those who have that adverse probability, whatever be that name, may not be able to make it in spite of all of that. So while you have knowledge and all other things, they are requirements, they are prerequisites. But do they give you a certain outcome? Well, not really. So you have to be at it for a long period of time. If you find you are in a difficult world, you're not going to get the same result or a different result by doing the same thing. What do you think? Are you going to get a different result by keep on doing the same thing? You have to change. You have to do things which are different. And that is how you will be able to grow out of all of this.
So with this, sir, as you are saying that knowledge and skills are the one that we should focus on. So can you suggest some things like books or what should we read so that we get this knowledge and skills that we should focus on?
Books on fundamentals of investing, taking courses in university on investing, studying hard at university,
Take Saumil Shah.
going to the humongous libraries that we have. Those are things which are unfashionable. Those are things which are difficult. Those are things which are
Yes.
non-glamorous, and very few people want to do that. Remember, there's no panacea that I can give you. Everyone has their own circumstances. Everyone has their own pathways. So you go to the library, you read books on investing. There's a wide variety. You start with the simpler ones, then progress. You get in touch with your respective faculty members, whatever part of the world you are in. You talk to people who are in the field of investments. You gain from their experience. So rather than giving just one set, which is a solution to all ills, because there's none, I would say explore. It is when you explore, you get experience. You learn to understand the difference between the good and the bad.
Yes.
And that is going to be your biggest teaching. More than what I can teach you, what more than anything of the professors in the whole world can teach you together. We faculty members can only guide you. Ultimately, you will have to walk the path.
That's true.
So the world is changing so fast.
Correct.
We are seeing new age companies and fintech platforms that are coming on day-to-day basis. We have platforms like Zerodha, Grow, Angel One. And today, anyone sitting anywhere in the world, they can invest or trade in the markets via one click. So the benefit of technology is you can have an ease and access of viewing and doing your daily course.
Correct.
But the split size, the other side of the technology is it can influence you to make a lot of wrong decisions.
Correct.
Because you don't consult anyone else, and you take all the decisions by your own, sitting at your home and doing your course. So why is technology playing a better role in changing investors' habits, or why is technology not playing a good role in creating a good amount of investment choices?
Well, technology is always good, I believe that.
Okay.
Technology has improved access. Earlier, only a few select individuals could gain access to the market. Technology has democratized that. But then, like every coin has two sides, technology has its upside and its downside. Upside is ease of doing the trade, ease of access to information. Downside is information overload, over trading, wanting to look at the markets every now and then. That's where knowledge and skill come into question. The knowledge to know that by looking at the prices every minute or by looking at some events, I'm not going to make money every now and then. So when you are talking about technology is a medium, and you can't really blame the medium for what are ills about you using the technology. For illustration, we have mobile phones. We are using it a lot more. When I was in the college, we didn't have mobile phones. Our parents could not know where we were. Today, is that a blessing or is that not a blessing? I'm sure all of you would agree that it's a blessing. So how you are using it and what more you use it for, what less you use it for, is something that by experience all of you will know, all of us will know, and therefore these technologies will eventually subside. The euphoria will subside and people will use it just as another tool, right? So yes, many of these apps, many of these software-based trading services are absolutely fantastic for people who know how to use them. For people who don't, well, you may overuse them. And like overeating, like doing anything in excess, it is injurious to your health. In this case, not only will be injurious to your health, it will also be injurious to your wealth. That is the only thing that I can say. So we have to learn to stay fit, knowledgeable, and I'm sure everyone will be all right.
That was a very insightful session from your side. Thank you for joining us at TWC, and let's hope people get to know about thinking how to attain in good amount of knowledge and skills in order to invest accordingly. So
Thank you very much for
thank you, sir.
inviting me. It has been a pleasure. I wish your club a lot of great success in the years to come. Your club has been doing a wonderful job in spreading the message of investing and wealth management. I hope you keep on doing that in the future. Wishing you all the very best.